and it was October 10th, his birthday. Yugao looked the pair in the eyes and made sure they damn well knew what Naruto had been through that day. He was tied up and screaming for help, the other ninja around me did nothing, most of them blame him as well. The man doused in gasoline and kerosene before a mob started stabbing him and then set him on fire. Tsunami's face held a look of horror and Tazuna looked like he wanted to vomit. Do you want to know the worst part? Yugao said quietly this wasn't a memory she liked revisiting. When I put the fire out and scared the mob off I took him to the hospital and the woman behind the reception desk took one look at him and said, "Take it away, we don't help things like it here, this is a place for people that deserve to be healed, to be helped, not monsters like him." I have never been more disgusted in a person than I was right then. That is why Naruto went off at Inari. He didn't like the assumptions that Inari made, but I think it's more than that too. Naruto looks at Inari and sees what he might have turned out like and that scares him. Yugao finished sounding tired, she had taken great pains not to reveal anything classified. Hell, that was the reason why she had asked Kurenai's team to go look for Naruto. The last thing that she needed was Genin asking questions about Naruto's past. They would be awkward to say the least and might even get them killed depending on what they found. Yugao looked up at Tsunami and Tazuna's faces, Tsunai was crying and Tazuna looked like he wanted to vomit. That was the way people should react to people doing things like that to children. The one time Yugao had overheard a shinobi talk about beating Naruto, his friends had bought him a free drink for teaching the demon its place amongst its betters. Yugao had knocked all three of them out cold and given them to Ibiki for a free 3-week session and told the master torturer to have fun. Ibiki looked like Christmas had come early and when she had told him why, the man's smile had turned to a grimace and Yugao knew those men were going to suffer. She couldn't bring herself to feel sorry for them, in fact she left the T&I, torture and interrogation, smiling and whistling a happy tune, good deed for the day done. Yugao stood up from the table and turned towards the front door. I should go help them look, otherwise they probably won't find him. The kid had survived 2 months in the forest of death, no way was a Genin team tracking him down with ease unless he wanted to be found. Yugao suspected he didn't and walked out. The Genin and Kurenai might not be able to find him, but she probably could. Probably. Naruto lay down in the clearing where he met Haku, just looking at the stars and full moon. One might not expect a former loudmouth, hyperactive, knucklehead like Naruto to enjoy such a thing. That being said, a lot of people have hobbies that don't suit them. He continued to gaze at the heavens, it was something he did when he needed to think by himself. Benham knew this and respected it, though he would venture a guess that she was probably awake and ready to talk if he needed to. He heard the soft pitter-patter of light steps of grass. Naruto didn't bother moving, he could tell Yugao's movements anywhere, they were something he had grown used to. The purple-haired Anbu-turned-sensei just sat down next to her student and looked at the moon. Never would have thought we would share this as a hobby. Seeing Naruto's curious look, she decided to extrapolate. Moon watching, it's something I like doing when I have time. She chuckled. I do it so often that I guess you could call it my hobby. Naruto nodded. Yugao didn't try to make him say anything, he would start talking when he was ready. Moon watching is your hobby, huh? A play on your name, I guess. Naruto said, smiling slightly. Yugao means moonflower. Yugao tossed her hair back and tried to cover her slight blush. Maybe, but maybe not. She said, trying to recover some of her lost dignity. Naruto's laugh assured her that was never going to happen. The blonde settled back to watch the sky again. You already know I'm not going to apologize and I will come back once I've cooled down, so what did you come here for, Yugao? Yugao sighed, she had been hoping to just chat for a little longer before turning to business, but it wasn't to be. It's about Zabuza, considering the kind of damage he took. Then adding to it his estimated recovery time, we think he will attack Tazuna within 2 to 3 days. Add to that his accomplice, that fake hunter, and I wanted you to know about it so that you could be ready. Naruto nodded, that made sense. There's a reason you haven't started to walk back yet, I take it this has to do with our other orders? Naruto asked, sounding tired. Yugao nodded grimly. Yes, as Zabuza will most likely attack in the next few days, we won't be doing any more jobs until he is dead along with his accomplice. We can't let him get away or he could interfere in another Konoha operation. Naruto nodded again before sighing. We're going to kill Gato after we take care of Zabuza, aren't we? Naruto just looked at the moon before pushing himself up to a sitting position. Yugao nodded. That was part of the reason I told Nai-chan and her students to go and look for you, knowing they couldn't find you. So that when I came back with you it wouldn't look suspicious and we could do our job in peace. Naruto nodded, not once taking his eyes off the moon. So what's our game plan? He asked, finally ready to get down to the hard part of the business they had to do. Zabuza or Gato? Yugao asked in return, she wasn't asking which one he wanted to know. Yugao was asking which one Naruto wanted to hear first. Zabuza. Naruto responded he was the bigger threat after all. Yugao nodded before taking a breath. The plan, or at least what we have, is simple. We go dressed in our everyday clothing. Can't have anyone taking too much of an interest in us after all, so that means no Anbu gear for me or for you. Also we're going to have to take care of that mask of yours when we get back. Naruto raised a confused eyebrow. Why? He asked confused. You aren't going to get rid of yours, are you? So why does mine need to go? Yugao sighed. That wasn't a bad argument, but there were still things Naruto didn't know about the Anbu. Yes, I am going to get rid of my mask when we get back, Naru-chan. She smiled at the way his eyebrow twitched at his nickname. One question: how do you think Anbu can tell each other apart and know their skill set without talking in advance? Naruto's face frowned in thought. That was a little tricky. It was obviously more than just their masks after all. There had to be more Nico masks in Anbu than just Yugao's. I don't know. He admitted. But if I had to guess, I would say something like observing each member's movement and then knowing them based on body language. That was in one of the books Yugao had made him read. Body language was like a fingerprint. Everyone had a different way of carrying themselves. No matter how similar one person could be to another, their body language would be subtly different, kind of like a fingerprint. Yugao smiled. That wasn't a bad guess, Naruto, but it was also wrong. Most people in Anbu do that. She admitted. But it isn't how we can tell who is who. The way we do that is based on the marking on our masks. I'm not the only Nico in Anbu, but based on how my mask looks, the others will know my skill set. That is why when a member comes back from an operation like this one, their mask is destroyed and they are given a different one with another date on it. So that the enemy can't keep tabs on the different Anbu and their skill sets based on their individual masks. Yugao finished her lecturing and smiled. But we're getting off track now. Where was I? She put her finger to her lips in a thought gesture. Alright, about Zabuza, the plan is quite simple. In fact, considering what we've got, I'm not really sure you could call it a plan. Me and Kurenai are going to take care of Zabuza, while you and Kiba take that fake hunter. Shino and Hinata will be guarding Tazuna. While we fight, in the event that you finish off your opponent before we do, you can support us, but only from long range. Alright. You're good, Naruto. For your age you're very, very good with your katana, but Zabuza is a former member of the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist. The 7 best sword users in Kurigakure and an A rank missing ninja in his own right. At your current level and close, you would just be in the way. Naruto nodded, a pained look on his face. And, Gato, I take it we have a bit more of a plan to deal with him, right? Yugao nodded grimly. Yes, we do. As you know, the team will just consist of you and me. We will infiltrate his compound and assassinate him. This time it will be causing as little of a ruckus as possible. We want his mercenaries alive. Naruto's eyebrow raised and he looked a little confused. Why do we want them alive? They could attack the village. Wouldn't it be better if we killed them off? Perhaps another explosive tag trap? Naruto asked. Yugao smiled. She liked it when people voiced other opinions. It gave one a better perspective to work with. Oh, don't get me wrong, we do in fact want them dead, but at the moment we need them alive. Yugao clarified before explaining more. Gato keeps a lot of money in different bank accounts and we are going to steal the access codes for them and rob him blind. But he also keeps a large amount of cash in his estate. That is why we want the mercenaries alive. We dump the cash in the courtyard with explosive tags buried underground, let them come out, take some of the money. Yugao smiled viciously. Then one of the mercenaries will probably get greedy and try to take too much. That will start a fight. We let them kill themselves off for a while, then detonate the seals, killing most if not all of the survivors. Finish off any left alive, then search the base for anything we want to take before blowing it sky high and returning to our usual mundane selves. Yugao finished brightly. Usual mundane selves. Naruto deadpanned to Yugao. Yugao, you are an Anbu agent and I am the Jinchuriki of the freaking QP. Naruto took a deep breath. What the hell is normal about us? He yelled, sounding more than a little annoyed. Yugao chuckled. Well, I guess you might have a point there. Yugao said, smiling, before changing to pure business. Anything to add to our little plan, Naruto-kun? She asked. Naruto looked up at the sky for a second before sighing. Yes. He said, sounding reluctant. If we're all going out to protect Tazuna, then there will be no one to watch the house. So it needs some kind of guard so that Gato can't pull a fast one on us and send his men after Tsunami and Inari. Naruto looked back to Yugao. How long do shadow clones last? He asked, looking at Yugao, who took another thinking pose, her finger touching her finger to her lips. I can make enough to easily cover the house and still fight. They will dispel with only 1 or 2 attacks though. They would last about 1.5 days. Good idea, Naru-chan. She said, smiling. Naruto just laid back down and looked at the moon. 10 more minutes? He asked. Yugao smiled. 10 more minutes. She confirmed, looking at the moon. After what Inari had said, she didn't feel like going back either. Their return to Tazuna's house had been informative. It turned out that a man called Kaiza became a father figure to Inari. Then over time Tsunami had come to love him and he became Inari's stepfather, making him the main influence in Inari's life. The kid apparently worshipped Kaiza as a hero and loved him like a father. The man was like his father, best friend and brother all in one, and the kid idolized him for it. When Gato came to Wave he saw Kaiza as a symbol of hope and prosperity. After all, he was called a hero by the people of Wave. Considering Gato's own plans for the nation, he couldn't let someone like Kaiza stay around, as he might be able to rally the people. If what Tsunami told them was correct, and she had no reason to lie, Kaiza had both his arms cut off and was extensively tortured before his death. Before the entirety of Wave, and perhaps most importantly Inari, for the reason of conducting terrorist activities against Gato Corporation, all eyes of course. Naruto had almost laughed when he had heard that. After all, that was exactly what Yugao and he were doing at the moment. The irony of the fact that they would free Wave from Gato's oppression of the country using the method Kaiza was executed for was not lost on him. As it was, he managed to keep the smile from his face and look serious, though he was fairly sure that Yugao caught the amusement in his eyes. At the end, Tsunami apologized for Inari's behavior to them and dispute what he had said earlier. Naruto apologized for the way he acted. He really didn't want to, but if Tsunami had managed to forgive him for the way he had acted towards her son and then apologize for him, then Naruto would swallow his pride and apologize to her. Though that's not to say he apologized for what he said. No, Naruto fully agreed with what he said. What he apologized for was the way he said it, and Tsunami accepted that, for which he was very grateful. The family was told the plan along with the slightly revised change of Yugao, placing some shadow clones around as bodyguards. He saw Kurenai flinch when they mentioned the shadow clones. Probably berating herself over not thinking of that before, adding she would place a genjutsu around the house to make it harder to find. Giving Yugao's shadow clones more warning if an attack were to come. After the rest of the plan was explained, they all went to rest. Naruto's last thoughts before sleep claimed him were that he hoped Yugao didn't get hurt. Naruto yawned as the bridge came into sight before going alert. The bridge was covered in mist that wasn't normal. "You all remember the plan, right?" Kurenai yelled out to her genin team. High came the call of the collective members. Yugao just looked at Naruto and got a nod in return before turning back to the bridge. The 6 ninja and 1 old bridge builder ran down to the old man's latest creation, the as of now unnamed colossal bridge. They arrived at its entrance to find corpses, bloody hacked to bits corpses. Hinata vomited and Kiba looked like he was trying hard to keep down his lunch. The mist parted slightly, giving them a look at the man inside it, a huge Zanbato on his back. The mist shifted again and the vision was obscured. Naruto didn't bother waiting for orders, he jumped straight into the mist, his hands blurring through hand seals, even as he fell rat snake horse dog. Naruto breathed in deeply before expelling the air from his lungs, and spinning the blade of wind blew away the mist and revealed the bridge to the others. Naruto stood in the center between the two groups and swallowed. He could feel the killing intent coming off Zabuza in waves. This was no small-time thug, this was the real deal. He could tell why Yugao didn't want him to fight Zabuza. He moved his attention to the masked killer's companion. The hunter was around a head taller than him, mask already in place. Naruto swallowed again and licked his lips. This was going to be the real thing, not the kind of fights he'd been through so far. Right now one slip could and indeed would cost him his life. "Ah, take that, you mask-wearing freak, how you gonna take me with a level playing field, huh?" Kiba yelled down to the group. Naruto sighed. If it wasn't for the fact he was sure Zabuza would kill him, if he showed an opening he would turn around, walk back to the group and smack Kiba upside the head. He obviously needed it. As things stood, Naruto settled for trying to drown Kiba, his soon-to-be partner in the upcoming battle, out. Naruto reviewed that sentence in his head. Kiba was going to be his partner in the fight. Dear sweet Kami, Yugao really did want to kill him. Yugao jumped down next to Naruto. "You ready?" Naruto smirked. "You bet, so I've got the freaky hunter right." Yugao looked at him in an exasperated fashion, the annoyance clear on her face. "And you take anything seriously?" Naruto looked at her in disbelief. "Me take something seriously? You must be joking." Yugao smacked him on the back of the head. This was all part of the act they had put together. A little more of a reason for people not to link them to Nico and Oni, though there really shouldn't be anyone who could link them. After all, they made sure to clean up as many loose ends as possible, still a little extra cover never hurt. The water clone of Zabuza formed behind Yugao. Naruto smirked. Another clone formed behind Naruto. Yugao smiled. The Zanbato they both held were pulled back ready to strike. Student and master attacked the clone, aiming for their significant other. Yugao's ninjato severed the clone's femoral artery. Beniham swung down and cut the clone from left shoulder to right hip. Both water clones turned into a puddle. Naruto and Yugao grinned at Zabuza. Naruto charged Haku, Beniham slashing down in a viscous arc. Haku's eyes widened beneath his mask as he grabbed a kunai and held it up defensively. The smashed against his defense. It wasn't as heavy as one of Zabuza's blows, but it still almost numbed his arm on impact alone. Naruto smiled at the masked hunter. "You know, Hunter-san," he said in a joyful tone. "You're not bad for stopping my Beniham head on. There's just one little problem." Haku's legs buckled under the weight and he grimaced. This was insane. "You, just like everyone else, seems to think that you can block me," Naruto yelled, pushing some Riryaku along Beniham's blade. Haku's face contorted in horror as he saw the katana slice through the kunai and race to his neck. He avoided it barely by jumping back, the diagonally slicing slash, instead of taking his head, only gave him a light cut from his left shoulder to his collarbone. Haku reevaluated his opponent. He couldn't just take this easy, it looked like he was going to have to get serious. Haku jumped backwards, just avoiding the drill-like attack from behind. Before taking a glancing blow to his right, the hit tore some of the skin from his ribcage. Haku's mouth felt dry. The second attack was difficult to dodge because he jumped not knowing about the follow-up. But that swordsman he met yesterday, Naruto, was dangerous. The two drill-like attacks stopped spinning the attackers standing next to the frowning swordsman. Two feral-looking boys stood there, each had a pair of red fang-like markings on their cheeks. "Hami, damn it, dope," Kiba yelled. "You made me miss, now we've got to do this the hard way." He snarled at Naruto. Naruto just looked at him for a second before dismissing him out of hand and turning his attention back to Haku. Needless to say, Kiba didn't take well to being ignored. "Damn it, dope, listen to me," he ranted. "Because of your fuck up we have to fight more. What's wrong, not willing to fess up that you fucked up?" Kiba taunted the blonde, who gained a tick mark over his left eye. Not that Haku blamed him, that was just unprofessional. "Kiba," Naruto said with barely concealed anger. "I did my job just fucking fine if you and your master had have gotten just a little closer. Instead of trying to launch an attack from that far away, you would have got him. Don't go blaming me because your stealth skills suck, got me dog breath." Kiba opened his mouth, no doubt to retort, before Naruto continued. "At any rate, get your head back in the game, looks like he's done playing." Naruto indicated Haku, who had taken another fighting stance, a kunai in his left hand and senbon needles in his right. "I'll take her head on you, look for another opening." Without waiting for an answer, Naruto kicked off the ground and ran at Haku. Yugao parried another of Zabuza's blows. Dear God, those were heavy. He had almost numbed her arms with one strike in his Zanbato, the Kubikurum. The thing was as tall as she was and wider, and the man swung it around like it was a goddamn toothpick. How much upper body strength did the man have? Zabuza yelled Kai again. Yugao grimaced. He had dispelled another of Kurenai's genjutsu. They were her lifeline right now. Zabuza would crush her if it came down to open combat. Just based on physical strength alone, he would easily break through her guard. It was the reason she hadn't tried to lock swords with him. She would be decimated. Zabuza undersmiled his bandages. "You're not bad, little lady," he admitted. That was an understatement if he had ever made one. The woman was one of the best sword wielders he had ever met. She wasn't at the level of any of the 7 swordsmen, but she was close. He almost wanted to give her another 3 or 4 years to let her come into her own before fighting her again, but he couldn't afford to let her walk away from this. "But you're not going to win, you must have realized that by now," he continued. "I've got you beat in terms of skill and strength. The genjutsu user back there is your lifeline. If you lose her, you are going to die, so let me offer you and those other brats a deal. Leave now and let me kill the bridge builder, and I will let you all live to fight another day." Yugao seriously considered it. She wasn't out of tricks just yet, but the odds weren't in her favor. Yugao weighed the pros and cons of her decisions before sighing. "I would like to take that offer, Zabuza," she admitted, surprising Kurenai behind her. "But I am afraid that I can't, so shall we start round 2? Yugao asked in a conversational tone. Zabuza shrugged. Well, at least he tried. He lifted his Kubikurum and charged a slightly recovered Konoha Anbu. Naruto had a snarl reminiscent of Kiba on his face as he slashed down at Haku. Kami, damn it, he was annoyed. The hunter knew better than to take his hits head on anymore, so he just danced around them or parried, and he didn't stay in one place long enough to make his Zanjutsu usable. A revolving drill that was Kiba slammed into the ground next to Haku, forcing her off course and getting a light cut against her shoulders from Naruto's attack. Before jumping back out of both boys' ranges, he grimaced. He had been hoping not to use this. "You've both done very well," he admitted before sighing. "But I am afraid that I can't afford to take any more damage. I had been hoping to render you both incapable of fighting, but it seems that won't be the case. I do not like cooling over. If you come at me, I will kill my heart with a blade and become a true shinobi." Haku started to make some hand seals and Naruto swallowed. He was fairly sure he could handle Haku up close, but he didn't know what was about to happen. "Please, both of you and that little dog there, please just give up." Kiba stepped forward, a smirk on his face. Both his and Naruto's attacks had been getting closer and closer of the hunter. They could take him. This guy was nothing big. He would admit that the dope was a help, but it was him that had been doing all the heavy lifting. "Bring it on, I'm not about to back down to someone who's half dead already," he taunted before running forward, ignoring the Kiba stop. That was yelled by Naruto. Haku finished his hand seals. Hijutsu. Makumheim's ice mirrors formed around him and the Inyazuka, confusing the latter. Haku looked at him for a second before stepping back into the mirror behind him. Then appearing in all the other mirrors, Kiba looked on in awe of the technique and had to admit it was impressive. "This is a part of my clan's Kekkei Genkai. It allows us to use Heimdallr ice release." Haku pulled Senbon into his hands, and his reflection in the other mirrors did as well. Kiba gulped. "This didn't look good. Goodbye, ninja of Konoha, I am sorry." Then the onslaught began. Yugao gulped down the air like it was water. She was exhausted and covered in cuts. They were all superficial, but they still hurt. Zabuza looked at her from across the bridge. He would admit the woman and her partner were doing very well. He felt Haku's chakra spike in the air grow colder. It was too bad that kid with the sword looked promising too. It had been a while since he had seen a swordsman split a kunai in one strike. You know those two brats are about to die, right? I'm not going to lie to you. In a straight-up fight I am the stronger between me and Haku. Zabuza sighed before tuning his attention back to the two Kunoichi. However, inside that jutsu of his, I've never beaten Haku, not even once, sorry, but those kids are dead. He said quite simply before readying Kubikarabm again and charging. Shino stiffened next to Hinata. The blue-haired genin looked at him strangely for a second. Ano Shino-kun, www, what's the matter? Shino's mouth pulled itself into a grimace. The Kikaichi placed on Naruto-san and Kiba-san have died. Before they did, they sent back a feeling of immense cold. Hinata-san, could you please check the mist for a construct capable of this? Hinata nodded her head nervously and activated her Byakugan. I see Shino-san, it's like a GG Great Dome of ice. Hinata stuttered out to her teammate. Shino nodded, his visage becoming progressively darker. He held up his hand as another of his Kikaichi insects landed on it. More bad news. The young Aburam said, even his monotone sounded worried. A large force is approaching from the river by boat. Fist indications put its strength at around 300. Shino turned back to Tazuna. We will be unable to handle this alone. Would it be possible to gather the townspeople to help? Tazuna looked at the young Aburam. Possible or not, we're going to have to. The old man said, turning around and running back towards the village. Shino in hot pursuit. Hinata took one last look at the slightly mist-covered bridge. After silently wishing Naruto luck, ran after her teammate and their client. Naruto looked at the ice dome. He had no idea what the hell to do in a case like this. A fully chanted Senkatsui did nothing more than make the ice melt slightly. That was the most destructive fire-type attack he had bar none. Raiden left a deep gash, but any damage that did was regenerated before he could capitalize on it. He was left with very few options. Naruto gritted his teeth and ran at the side of the dome. He couldn't see much from outside. But if he was inside, maybe he could figure out the trick that Hunter was using and capitalize on it to finish the fight. If not, he would have to rely on Shikai to get the job done. Kiba wasn't having too much of a good time inside the dome either. He wasn't very cut up as the rapid spinning of Akamaru, and his Gatsuka was too fast for the Senbon to harm them. That didn't mean he wasn't cut up. Every time he stopped, he was hit with another wave of Senbon needles. He was slowly but surely being driven into a corner. He did hear constant crashes from outside. He figured Naruto was trying something to break the dome, but it wasn't working. Another wave of Senbon raced towards him. He wasn't going to be able to move in time. The silvery edge of the katana passed in front of his nose, stopping the Senbon about to take his eye. Naruto's eyes raced around the dome. 12 on the bottom, 8 on the top, total 20 mirrors. But all these hunters a cloning technique. No, it's just his reflection in the mirrors, so he's moving between them at high speed and attacking from different angles. Well, at least that means there's only one of him, or this could be a lot worse. But now how do I use what I know? Naruto cast a quick look back at his injured teammate. He didn't like Kiba much, but he didn't want him hurt either. You okay, Kiba? Naruto wanted to keep any talking short and sweet. At the moment he was being given time by the hunter ninja. He just didn't know how long it was going to last. The figure in the mirrors seemed to be looking at him almost sadly. As he drew another lot of Senbons preparing to throw, Naruto grimaced. He didn't know which one was the real hunter. Dodging this was going to be a bitch. Kiba nodded as he stood up preparing to use his Kitsuga with Akamaru again. The little nin dog was also suffering from a lot of lacerations, Naruto noted. The needles cut through the air. Naruto ducked. He couldn't tell what Senbons were real and what ones were false, but the time spent in the forest of death had sharpened his survival skills. Right now they were screaming at him to duck, so he did, and half a dozen Senbons flew through the air over his head. Kiba wasn't so lucky, another 3 striking him in the thigh, all in major pressure points. Naruto's eyes widened in horror. He wasn't going to make it. He wasn't that fast. The Senbon needles cut through the air one last time, hitting Kiba in the neck. The Inyazuka went down, a surprised look on his face, like he was asking if this was really the way he was going to die. Akamaru ran to his owner, only to be cut down by the next wave of Senbon, silencing the little dog and its constant barks, asking his friend to get back up. Naruto just stared at the scene and felt nothing, no anger, no sorrow or hate, nothing. Just a gaping black void. Sure, he hadn't been on the friendliest terms with Kiba, but he wasn't a bad guy. Just a little too arrogant and cocky. Naruto looked up at the hunter with blank eyes. I am sorry. Haku said softly. But I couldn't just let him go, or you. I won't ask for you to forgive me, just for you to understand. You know, I've never told anyone this, but I want you to hear it before you die. Naruto said, his voice equal parts calm and terrifying. When I was 7, I was brutally beaten by the villagers of Konoha because I was something they couldn't understand, something they couldn't comprehend. I was stabbed through the stomach by a katana by one of the men meant to protect me, some of the mob that came to kill me pissed on me, others spat on me. I was defeated. Humiliated. Naruto looked back up at Haku, his eyes completely void of emotion. But in my defeat I found something deep inside and hidden away. From the ashes and blood of my defeat and my humiliation, the real me crawled forth covered in blood. Now then, I think I am going to show you what the real me really is. Naruto finished in his calm tone before looking straight at the mirror Haku was in, making the hunter's eyes widen. Naruto held his katana out to his side point facing the earth and slowly began rotating it towards the sky. Akiro, Benham. The katana changed, revealing her Shikai state. Naruto looked back at Haku, eyes not blinking. Here I come, try not to die too quickly, will you? Naruto swung Benham horizontally, cutting straight through the ice mirror. Benham was roaring inside him and he was letting all his bloodlust and hers loose for this fight. Haku's eyes were bugging out of his head, his ice mirrors, not even Zabuza-sama had been able to break them, and now some kid and a weird katana cut through one with no effort, that was insane. Benham came back over Naruto's head. Riot in the attack wasn't said with anger or malice, it was said with a cold calm precision that chilled Haku to the bone. Benham came down and 3 more mirrors were destroyed. Haku stepped out of the mirrors and let them dissolve. No point in keeping up such a draining ability if it wasn't going to work. Naruto watched as the hunter pulled out a pair of kunai and ran, closing the distance between them in a second. Naruto didn't show any surprise, just raising Benham and bringing her down on Haku's head. The young fake hunter brought his kunais up in a cross block. Benham hit the guard and didn't stop in the slightest, cutting through the metal kunai, Haku's hunter mask and right pectoral like a hot knife through butter. Naruto followed through with a swing and planted Benham in the ground and used her as a pivot to kick Haku in the sternum. The air rushed out of the young man's body as he flew backwards. Naruto jumped after the fake hunter Benham held high to deliver the killing blow. Haku just watched as the katana's edge got closer, so this was how his life ended, was it? It was a shame he couldn't help Zabuza-sama finish his goals, but his opponent was too strong. The death blow he was expecting didn't come, the katana just touching the flesh of his throat. You were the last person I was expecting, Haku. Haku looked up at the blonde, there was still no emotion in Naruto's eyes. Sorry for deceiving you, Naruto-kun, I am just Zabuza-sama's tool. Nothing more, nothing less, but I didn't lie to you. I really do think that people become stronger to protect someone. For me that someone is Zabuza-sama, so, Naruto-kun, I need to ask you a favor if you will hear me out. Naruto nodded, interested in what the fake hunter had to say. Please kill me. Please kill me. These words took a moment to run through Naruto's head. Why do you want me to kill you? He asked. It really was strange, not many people exactly asked others to kill them after all. Haku smiled. I am Zabuza-sama's tool, he doesn't need a broken tool. Haku said simply, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. I lived for Zabuza-sama's dream. I don't have one to call my own, as long as I served him I didn't need one. But now, Naruto-kun, you've taken away my reason to live, so all I have is the pain of being alive. So please, Naruto-kun, please kill me, I want to die. For the first time in a long time Naruto was at a loss of what to do, he just didn't know. He could feel the cold rage that had flooded through him like a torrent of ice finally settle down. Haku took a look over his shoulder and his eyes widened with shock and horror. He created one last ice mirror. Sorry, Naruto-kun. He said, smiling. Looks like this tool had one more job left. Yugao allowed herself a smile of satisfaction as her blade slashed at Zabuza's neck. Kurenai had deliberately gotten herself knocked out to create this opening and she wasn't about to waste it. Lighting chakra lit up her ninjato as it streaked downwards. Yugao didn't even notice the ice mirror form next to Zabuza or the figure leaping out of it until it was too late. Her sword carved through the boy's chest and stomach, like the organs and bones weren't even there. Though she was a little off-put by the look of contentment on the boy's face. Zabuza looked at the picture for a second before laughing. Looks like I picked up a good tool. He said with glee, slashing at Yugao through Haku. The Anbu managed to deflect the blow enough that it didn't hit her before fainting from chakra depletion. The purple-haired woman spared one last look at her student before passing out. Naruto ran to Yugao even as she fell and positioned himself in front of her, blocking any more incoming strikes from Zabuza. None came. The Kuritaker no Kijin was looking at him oddly, as if trying to figure out a puzzle. Naruto began to feel his blood boil. It was because of him Haku was dead, it was because of him Kiba was dead, it was because of him Yugao was dead. Naruto's thoughts spiraled out of control as he began to feel more and more rage flow through him. Zabuza pulled back Kubikurim. If the kid wasn't going to move, then he was going to die. He swung horizontally. He was expecting the kid to be cut in half. What he was not expecting was his blow to be stopped head-on. Naruto felt the Zanbato hit Benham, but didn't care. He pushed back with all his might and forced the older man back. Zabuza's eyes widened. This strength, this was insane. Naruto just looked at Zabuza before taking his stance. Benham began to glow red. Naruto looked at Zabuza unflinchingly. Here I come, Zabuza, and I will cut you. Naruto charged forward, the Zanbato was swung down. Benham's voice came back to him. If you dodge, I won't let them cut me. The attack was sidestepped with all the skill of a master. Zabuza's eyes widened. The kid had skill and more than a little. Bibikurum lashed out horizontally and Naruto brought Benham up. When you block, I will not die. With a show of immense skill and strength, Naruto finished swinging Benham down accompanied by a flash of red light. Zabuza looked down and saw his chest separate from his body. Strangely enough, he died with a smile on his face. The kid had been a good fight after all, and the last attack, Zabuza's last thought was one word. Magnificent. Naruto just looked at the corpse. The sound of clapping reached his ears, but he didn't react to it. There was no need to, he didn't want to after all, so why bother? The presence embraced him from behind, and time seemed to stop. The arms around his neck were pale white, and the person's fingernails were painted black. This set off alarm bells in Naruto's head. Benham didn't have black fingernails. Who was this? He wanted to turn around, but couldn't. Then the presence spoke. It was definitely the voice of a woman. Sweet, supple and warm. Just listening to that voice warmed his heart. Now, Naruto-kun, you can't afford to be careless. It's not over yet. Just remember one thing from me, okay? No giving up, alright? The voice and presence retreated as it left. Naruto caught a glimpse of black hair. Time started to return back to normal, and the sound of clapping echoed across the bridge. My oh my, how hard is it to find good help these days? Came the mocking voice from the end of the bridge. Naruto looked towards the voice. The natural mist of the wave country obscured his vision slightly. But he could still make out all the important points. A small man with a cane in front of around 300 mercenaries. Naruto didn't feel scared or worried. He didn't feel anything. That presence's words were still ringing in his head, especially the last part. No giving up was it. Naruto turned to face the conglomerate head Benham held loosely by his side. I see, so you're the one who killed Zabuza. Well, no real loss on my part. Those damn missing ninja always cost so much to hire. I probably would have had him killed sooner or later. The midget indicated the men around him and smiled. After all, for the same price as Zabuza, I hired all these men for a 6-month contract. Just what do you think of that, Mr. Ninja? Normally I would offer you a place in Gato Corporation after what you did to Zabuza, but I think you would be too much of a loose cannon. Gato spotted Yugao laying behind Naruto, sprawled out in the same position she had been knocked out in. The shipping magnate smiled in a perverse grin. That lovely lady behind you, however, I can find a use for. Many people would pay top dollar for a woman like that. I think I'll have a bit of fun with her first though. Not that it matters to you though. Now then, boys, attack and take everything that it looks like it's worth something from the town. Naruto stopped listening to the man in front of him after the comment about Yugao. He needed to do something. He needed to stop him, but how? He might not look it, but he was tired, so very, very tired. Something shifted in his chest like the heartbeat of a vengeful god. The voice came from inside his mind like liquid malice. Then kill them. Naruto looked at the approaching bandits. Kill them all. 50 meters before they reached him. Kill them. 20 meters. Kill them all and protect them. Kill them, kill them, kill them. Naruto could feel the blood pounding through his veins as time slowed down once more. Yes. He agreed with the voice. Deep within Naruto's subconscious came the rattling of chains as murderous red energy spilled out from behind a huge gate. Two red eyes looked at the dark world that they were bound in, and the great fox looked up to the pitch-black heavens and roared. Finally, after so long. I have awoken. There was no time for thought. Benham cut up, down, left and right relentlessly. Naruto noted with a detached calm that his enemies froze on occasion. What he couldn't see was his own blood-red eyes. His left hand shot out, grabbing another bandit's throat and crushing the life out of him. Benham was thrown into the air as he started making hand seals. Ton. Shinka. The exhaled spinning, blood splattered over the bridge from the bandits around him. Naruto jumped back to observe the carnage. He'd been at this for almost 20 minutes and was covered in small lacerations and more blood than he thought possible. Out of the roughly 300 bandits, he had taken down at least 80. This power that was flooding through him is incredible. Some of the men seemed to think him easy prey without Benham and charged him. A cruel smile twisted Naruto's face. Bakuto number 4 Hinawa. The yellow energy erupted from his hands and coiled around the still airborne Benham. Dragging the Shikai State Zanpakuto back to her partner's hand. Naruto cut up from his left, spilling the first innards. The second had his head taken from his shoulders. The final bandit was stabbed through the lungs. Then kicked off Benham's blade. He pointed at a dense amount of bandits. Hado number 4 Bakurithi. Pale lightning lanced from Naruto's finger, tearing through 7 men before dispersing. He looked on with a smile. This power, it seemed limitless. It was intoxicating. Naruto started laughing. His opponents were down to a measly 200 men. With this power, 200 was no better than none at all. These men had no chakra. They were no ninja. What could such measly insects do to him? Now he held this magnificent power. Naruto charged and the slaughter began anew, head and arms torn off the bodies they were attached to by his left hand, severed limbs marked the passage of his right. He was laughing amidst a rain of crimson, he killed and then kept on killing, until only Geto was left. The blood-stained ninja stood in front of the small CEO and founder of Geto Shipping, still dripping with his opponent's blood. Benham's blade glinted in the sunlight as he put her above his head, blood from the blade falling onto his face. Geto cowered before the figure of the preteen, Benham came down severing Geto's head from his shoulders. The power drained out from his body, Naruto's vision stopped being clouded by rage, and he looked back on what he had done and promptly threw up. Bodies, if you could even call them that anymore, were everywhere, not even one bandit was in one piece, hands, feet, eyes, they were all missing something. He had agreed to killing for a higher cause, but he had never even seen death on this scale, he didn't think it was possible. Naruto looked at the carnage for a second before fainting, he thought he heard someone calling his name as he fell. He was a stamina freak, no questions asked, but pulling out that power along with using Benham and Shikai had taken its toll on him. No one noticed as the Crimson Princess returned to her sealed state. Naruto felt like he had been pushed into a lake and opened his eyes, the Konoha replica in his mindscape was empty as always. He felt a pair of warm and comforting arms wrap around him, he could feel Benham, and her mere presence reassured him. There was no scolding about moving forward, no displeasure in her bearing, only complete and utter understanding. Before he slipped into unconsciousness in Benham's arms, it looked as if the sky had lightened just a little more. Yugao was worried for Naruto, he had killed Zabuza and those thugs afterward, but what kind of damage had been done to his mind as a result? She didn't know, he had already been through so much as a kid, she wasn't sure how much more his mind could take. At least she wouldn't have to worry about needing to destroy Geto's mansion, coupled with their destruction of the slave pens and all the bandits yesterday. Geto Corporation was in ruins, Yugao had discreetly sent some of the documents she had liberated, for lack of a better term, to the Wave Country daimyo, keeping a few of the more illegal dealings with Kiri to herself for Konoha of course. The Wave daimyo was overjoyed at being able to find a ligament excuse to dismantle Geto Corporation. In conjunction with Tazuna, the daimyo was sending more funds and men to build the bridge. The old man was overjoyed, he didn't know what to do first, besides drink some more sake for his good luck and fortune. Old drunk. Yugao lamented when she had first seen him after the letter came, she turned back to her student. Naruto's eyes flickered open. "Huh, Nico-chan, what are you doing in my room?" he asked in a bleary tone. Yugao hugged him, she was so revealed he was awake, it had been 3 days after all. The next 3 weeks passed in a blur, the bridge was completed in record time, it seemed like every man and woman in Wave had come out to help. Kiba survived his wounds, Haku was too soft-hearted to kill after all, Naruto shed a few tears for his fallen friend in private. Then constructed a grave for both him and Zabuza when no one was around, though he suspected that Yugao and Kurenai knew about the graves. After all, famous Anbatos like Zabuza's Kubikurimchim don't just up and go missing out of nowhere, but they stayed quiet about it, to which Naruto was eternally thankful. Apparently both Shino and Hinata had seen him kill Geto, and didn't ask about how he found the strength to kill almost 300 men single-handedly. They didn't ask though something else Naruto was grateful for, Kiba seemed to be under the impression that Yugao and Kurenai had killed them, Naruto was in no rush to correct him. That would have led to more uncomfortable questions than he was comfortable answering, though he knew that he would have to talk to the Hokage about it when they returned. On a more lighthearted note, Inari had started to look up to him and see the world as a better place, instead of just sitting and feeling sorry for himself. In fact, most of Wave hailed Naruto as a hero, after more than half the island's inhabitants turned up with urging from Tazuna and Inari to help Naruto on the bridge when Geto attacked. The time eventually came when it was time to leave. Time skip leaving Wave. It looked like all of Wave had turned up to see them off, the mass gathering of people warmed Naruto's heart and filled it with more than a little sorrow. On one hand, all those people were safe and happy again, on the other hand they called him a hero. No, they just called him a hero because they didn't know what he had done to the people in that bar. If they knew what he had done, would they call him a hero then? Naruto doubted it. He didn't delude himself into thinking that sacrifices were not needed to save Wave, but that didn't make the memories any easier to swallow. Inari walked up to him and smiled. "You're really a hero, Hanai-chan," he said in a warm and happy voice. Naruto fought down a grimace and smiled back at Inari. "Yep, you're damn right I am," he said loudly, smiling at the younger boy, then laughing. He hoped no one could tell how forced it was. Naruto patted Inari on the head and smiled. "Just remember, kid, no giving up, alright?" Naruto stopped. Where had he heard those words before? Inari just smiled up at him. "Right, Naruto Nai-chan, no giving up." Naruto patted him one last time on the head and walked away with the others. "So what are we going to call the bridge?" one of the men in the crowd yelled out. Tazuna thought for a second before smiling. "We'll call it the Great Naruto Bridge, after the hero who fought for our county and gave it back hope." the old man said with conviction. There was a resounding roar of approval. Naruto heard the declaration from the other side of the bridge and stopped. Please. He thought to himself. Please don't call me a hero. He begged inside his mind. A warm breeze caressed his cheek and he looked up to the pure azure sky. The wind blew again, he smiled, it sounded like the singing of a beautiful crimson-haired princess he knew so well. Looking back up the trail, with a determined smile on his face he started running after the group. Naruto sighed as he looked at the form in front of him, a form that would decide his entrance to the Chunin exams. He looked up at the sky, to say it had been an interesting month would be a massive understatement. Flashback reassembling of Team 7. Naruto tried to keep the bored look off his face as he waited at Team 7's designated training ground. His apprenticeship with Yugao had ended yesterday. He wasn't happy about that little fact either. Naruto worked well with the purple-haired Anbu captain, but a bigger factor was that he actually liked her. More than could be said for Sakura or Sasuke, still, he did promise her he would give them a chance before dismissing them out of hand. He might not like it, but he always kept his promises no matter what. Naruto turned his head so he could see the approaching figure and whistled. Sakura had changed a lot, it looked like she was taking her job as a ninja more seriously. That was a good thing in Naruto's book. Her pink hair had been cropped short, probably to avoid it getting grabbed by an enemy Naruto guessed. Full-length black and gray pants, ninja sandals, to his disappointment, 2 kunai and shuriken holsters on each leg. Surrounded by several strapped-on slightly longer kunai around her thighs, considering that they had sheaths he guessed they were probably covered in poison. A pair of red leather belts crisscrossed over her hips holding 6 scrolls each. A wakizashi was strapped horizontally across her hips. A black mesh top with a red jacket over it completed her look. He suspected, and rightly, that he would find the clan crest of the Harunos on the back of the jacket. Naruto nodded to his soon-to-be teammate. So far so good, she was definitely taking her job more seriously. But he didn't say anything, he was more than content to let Sakura make the first move in this little game. The pincat looked at him for a moment before looking away guiltily and rubbing her left shoulder with her right hand. The habit, Naruto knew from his years of watching her, that she only had when she was nervous about something. Sakura looked at him for another minute before seemingly gathering her courage. Naruto. She said a little timidly. Naruto just nodded to her. Sakura took a deep breath. I am sorry about what I said when we were first paired with Sasuke, it was both insensitive and immature. Can you forgive me for what I did back then? She asked, sounding more than a little scared. Naruto's eyes felt like they were about to fall out of his skull. Sakura apologizing, no, more importantly Sakura apologizing to him. What the hell was going on? Did Yugao hit him too hard or something yesterday when they were sparring? Naruto settled for getting his eyes back to normal before responding. Thanks for apologizing, Sakura. He admitted, it really did feel nice to hear someone apologizing for something to him. But please excuse me if I am a little skeptical, but I think I can forgive you. Sakura looked at him in surprise. She wasn't expecting him to accept her apology. 6 months of Anko's hell had pounded an appropriate sense of right and wrong into her. One untainted by her clan superiority complex, Naruto was just the first person on a very long list of people she needed to apologize to. Anko had forced her to reevaluate just how much being in a clan mattered on the battlefield, namely, that it didn't matter at fucking all. Sakura was already saving up to move out of her house, it was something Anko had recommended to her. In order for her to gain an unbiased view on people in the world, she would need to view it from a place where her clan couldn't influence her views, too much at least. Naruto held out his hand to her and smiled. Let's start fresh. Hello, Haruno Sakura, my name is Uzumaki Naruto. It is a pleasure to meet you, and I look forward to working with you. Sakura just looked at his hand for a second before smiling herself and placing her hand in his, before giving him a firm handshake. It's nice to meet you, Uzumaki-san, I look forward to working with you. She finished, a full-blown grin on her face. Naruto just chuckled. He had agreed to give them a second chance, so far and so good. He would forgive Sakura, but not forget what she did. This was her second chance, a chance she was given by Yugao's request. If she ever needed a third she would have to earn it. Considering the way she was acting at the moment though, Naruto didn't feel like they would have any problems. Both their heads turned, Naruto whistled again. It seemed like his new and improved teammates were out to impress him. Sasuke was actually walking around without an air of arrogance. That was the first thing Naruto noticed, and he was immediately thankful for. Gray pants, shinobi sandals, again was there no one competent enough to realize that wearing them would get you stabbed in the foot. Gray shirt with Anbu issue chest plate and arm guards, that surprised him. An ninjato over Sasuke's right shoulder with a kunai and shuriken holster on each leg and steel greaves over his shins. Naruto stayed quiet again. He said he would give them a chance. So far Sakura had asked for forgiveness from him, and that was a big step forward in their relationship, both working and social. But Sasuke, Naruto didn't think the Uchiha knew the meaning of the word humble, let alone how to be so, and as such he was content to watch and once again let his prospective teammate make the first move. Sasuke looked at Naruto for a second before getting on his knees and putting his forehead to the floor. Uzumaki Naruto. Sasuke started, his voice not faltering in the slightest. Naruto could tell that Sasuke meant what he was saying. Back in the Hokage's office, I attempted to take something that was not mine, but yours, and for that I am deeply sorry. Is there any chance you could forgive me and work with me on missions as Team 7 from here on out? Sasuke asked formally. Naruto felt his heart stop. What the hell was going on? He really didn't know. Was he still asleep? Was this a dream? Was he hit by something a little too hard and it gave him a concussion? All these possibilities and more ran through his head, and as such he did what any normal person would have done in that situation. He drew Benihim and placed her to the Uchiha's neck. Who are you and what have you done with Uchiha Sasuke? Naruto asked, his tone cold. No way in hell was the Sasuke he was just too, well, nice. The Uchiha stared up at him with disbelief. I am Uchiha Sasuke. The man on the ground said, sounding perplexed. Sakura's Wakizashi joined Benihim on the Uchiha's neck. No, you're not. Sakura said with venom in her voice. Sasuke would never apologize to people he feels are below him like he thinks me and Naruto are. So let me ask you instead, who are you and what have you done with Uchiha Sasuke, and if I so much as think you are lying to me, I will cut off your balls. Naruto shivered at that. No man, he thought back to Wave and the underground slave pins. Almost no man, he amended, deserved that. That was the scene Kakashi walked onto, and though it took almost 3 hours and many different questions before both Naruto and Sakura were satisfied that Sasuke was in fact Sasuke, Naruto rubbed the back of his head in a sheepish manner. Well, sorry about that. He said, sounding nervous. It was more than a little strange, you of all people apologizing to someone, especially me. Sakura nodded in agreement, even she thought that was something that would never happen. Naruto held out his hand to Sasuke. Let's try this one more time. Hello, my name is Uzumaki Naruto. It is pleasure, I look forward to working with you, Uchiha-san. Naruto finished smiling. Sasuke couldn't help snorting in amusement as he took the offered hand. First you hold a katana to my neck and then next you tell me you look forward to working with me. Sasuke said, sounding more than slightly amused by the entire situation. It is nice to meet you, Uzumaki-san. I hope we work well together. All three of them looked at each other before bursting out laughing. Kakashi felt a small warm feeling in his chest as he watched them. He recognized it as pride. Then flashback. After that they spent the month doing team-based exercises to get them up to scratch as a unit and D-rank missions to put that training into real situations. Even if they were only chores, there was no way in hell those things counted as missions. Naruto found he actually liked the new Sasuke and Sakura, though when he asked Kakashi-sensei what he did to beat the arrogance out of Sasuke, all he got was an eye smile. Asking Sasuke got similar results, except instead of smiling he shivered and walked away without saying anything. As for Sakura, she was more than happy to talk about her training, just not the first 2 months. If you asked about those she just shuddered and changed the subject. Not that Naruto minded too much, he was just glad they could have a conversation without her trying to cave his head in with her fist. It's a real wonder what a little thing like that can do for a relationship. At any rate, he learned that Sakura was trained by someone called Anko. One of the things he had been trying to figure out was what had happened to him on the bridge. He guessed it had something to do with the QB, but Benihim couldn't tell him as she knew about as much as he did. Though she did mention that the power felt both dark and malevolent, that alone made him think it was the QB. Benihim couldn't find where the fox was in his mindscape though. That led them to the conclusion that the QB's seal was most likely in a part of the mindscape neither of them had access to, at least not yet. The payment Naruto had received from the S-rank mission he and Yugao had completed was more than nice. He had wanted to put it in the bank, but as no bank would allow him to open him an account he couldn't. Naruto smiled at the memory of how he had gotten around that little problem. He would be making more use of that particular disguise, it just felt natural somehow. Flashback. First National Bank of Konoha, 1 week ago. The sound of traditional Jetta sandals alerted the bank to a new customer. The man in question was fairly tall, with dirty blonde hair and gray eyes. His outfit was of a green pair of pants and obi with a darker green jacket over top with a diamond design on its hem. The look was completed with a green striped bucket hat and a wooden walking stick that was actually a hinged Benihim. Aheo. The man said, smiling shyly to the bank teller in front of him. I am looking to start a savings account along with an investment portfolio. What would I need to see about that? The young brown-haired woman smiled at him. Ah, you would have to see the manager, Suba-san, for that, mister. The blonde looked at her sheepishly and smiled. Ah, that's right, I haven't introduced myself yet, have I? He said in a happy tone. My name's Kisuke, Urahara Kisuke. Flashback end. Naruto smiled at the memory of the interaction. By the end of that day, he had his 500,000 ryo nicely divided up. Half the money was spread between 3 different savings and check accounts, and the other half was placed in various shares and bonds, along with trust agreements. But the money that came in from said shares and bonds, 20% of it went into his accounts, the other 80 went back into buying more shares. He also set up a transaction that sent his rent money directly to his landlord, so he didn't need to worry about that for a long time. Naruto smiled. He was glad Yugao had made him read that book on finances. It really was handy, after all, who didn't want to know how to best use their money. His smile widened when he thought of Yugao and his Jiji. Somehow Yugao had managed to convince him that teaching Naruto the Kage Bunshin was a good idea. After making him swear never to use it for pranks, Yugao had also told him the secret of the Kage Bunshin and then warned him not to become over-dependent on it. Yes, he could use the Kage Bunshin to learn an obscene amount of techniques, and quickly too, but that was not necessarily a good thing. If he over-relied on the Kage Bunshin to learn, he would have memories of doing things, but he would have never actually done them. Yugao had told him that it was an easy trap to fall into, the over-reliance on Kage Bunshin instead of on yourself. Her solution for him was that he could have his Kage Bunshin learn something to an average level and then perfect it himself, and he could see the wisdom there. With the amount of chakra Naruto had, he could easily create a few hundred Kage Bunshin, but Yugao had warned that he might start to just rush his enemies with numbers and neglect his basic skill set. That was not a good thing. Yes, that was a jab at Canon. Naruto turned his attention back to the form in front of him, he placed it back into his pocket and kept walking. "Hey, let me go." Came the yell from nearby. Naruto started running. He couldn't shake the feeling he had heard that voice somewhere before. He rounded the last corner and saw something both incredible and immensely disturbing, a man in what could only be called a black cat suit and makeup, holding a squirming 8-year-old off the ground by his shirt. Konohamaru, he thought, sighing before walking forward. The kid could be a pain, but he wasn't a bad kid. Something had to be up. "Yo," he said, giving a lazy wave. "Would you mind dropping the kid for me, please?" He drawled in a lethargic tone. In a bookshop in the middle of Konoha, Kakashi paused from his browsing of the Icha Icha series and pumped his fist into the air. "Yes, I knew I'd get one of them someday," he shouted, sounding proud. Naruto cocked his head to the side. "Why, so I feel like I just made someone's day," he asked himself, then receiving the mental equivalent of a shrug from Benihim in return. Naruto turned his attention back to the catman in front of him. Said man looked annoyed. Naruto sighed. Why couldn't anything in his life be easy even once, just freaking once? "No way in hell am I letting this little snot go," the man said indignantly. "He bumped into me and he's gotta pay the price for disrespecting me." Naruto turned his attention to Konohamaru. "Is true, Kon?" he asked, sounding tired. Konohamaru nodded as well as he could. "Yes, Naruto Nai-san," he admitted. "But it was an accident and I said sorry, but this big jerk won't let me go." Naruto turned his attention back to the catsuit man. "Look, the kid said sorry, can't you just let it go? He's only what, 8 years old?" "He's right, Kankuro, he's just a kid, let him go already. The last thing we need is an incident now," said the blonde woman from behind him, sounding exasperated. "Shut up, Tamari, the kid disrespected me, I can't just let something like that slide," Kankuro shouted back. Naruto sighed. He hated people like this, too much time on their hands with too much that they thought they had to prove. Naruto looked them over again and took notice of the sand hit I ate on the two. "Look," he said in a conversational tone. "Since you guys are from Sand, I take it you're here for the Chunin exams." Naruto continued on, not bothering to wait for the answer. "A word of advice, don't rock the boat right now. If you keep doing what you're doing, you're going to cause an international incident." Naruto finished calmly. The woman Tamari looked a little worried at his statement, but the black-clad man Kankuro just either didn't listen or didn't care. "Yeah, right, we're gonna cause an international incident, you shithead," he said sarcastically. "No way in hell is that gonna happen. All that's going to happen is me kicking your ass," he finished in a superior tone. Naruto looked at him with boredom etched on his features. "Huh, did you say something?" That odd shiver that felt like he had made someone's day happened again, and he could swear he could hear Kakashi laughing like a madman in the distance. Kankuro's face contorted in rage. "What the hell did you say, you little shit?" Kankuro yelled at him. Naruto smirked. Negotiations had broken down, well, he had liked plan B more anyway. "Kankuro?" came the strangled voice of Tamari from behind him. The young puppeteer ignored her in favor of giving a death glare to the blonde in front of him. "Kankuro?" came the strangled voice again. The puppeteer ignored his sister again, taking the Pakage off his back and smirking at the kid in front of him. It was a smirk that promised pain. "Kankuro?" Tamari screamed, sounding desperate. What, he yelled back, turning his head so he could see her, and his breath caught in his throat. Tamari was still there, but two copies of the blonde around her, one holding her right arm, the other her left, and both had a kunai at Tamari's throat. Kankuro turned back to the original blonde only to see a blur moving forward. Naruto reached the arm he was using to hold Konohamaru and threw a palm strike to the older teen's elbow, hyperextending the ligament and rendering the arm useless for at least an hour. Naruto spun, grabbing Konohamaru and jumping back to his original position. He put the slightly trembling Konohamaru on the ground and ruffled his hair. You did good, Kon. Naruto said, smiling at the small boy. He turned his attention back to the sand duo. Now then, let's try this again. Naruto said in a low, dangerous voice. A word of advice, don't rock the boat or I will end you. Naruto accented his point by drawing Benihim and pointing her at Kankuro. And tell your little buddy up in the tree to come down, no need to hide amongst friends after all. His last words were laced with sarcasm. Kanuko and Temari paled. Kankuro, you're a disgrace to our village. Came the cold monotone voice from the tree before a small sandstorm churned between Naruto and the sand duo. It subsided quickly to reveal a young man with short-cut red hair and the kanji for love on his forehead. Naruto swallowed, every last part of his survival instincts were screaming at him to be careful, after all the kid was pumping out more bloodlust than Zabuza that alone unnerved him. But, Gaara, I was just. Kankuro tried to explain, Gaara just looked at him with bone-chilling indifference. Kankuro, shut up or I'll kill you. Gaara turned his attention over to Naruto. I apologize for my teammate's behavior, I hope it will not be a problem. He stated neutrally. Naruto could feel himself slowly adjusting to the killing intent the kid was pouring out. Normally he would be inclined to talk some more, find out more about them, but right now he needed to get Kon out of here and fast. It won't be a problem, just please make sure he doesn't do it again, please. Naruto answered politely. He really needed to leave now. He couldn't risk a fight with the redhead. He would have a chance of winning if it was all three on him, but he would be fighting to protect Kon at the same time. Since that was the case, he wouldn't last very long. Gaara nodded to the blonde. Kankuro, Temari, we are leaving, Baki-sensei wants to speak to us. He motioned them to leave as Naruto dispelled his clones. The redhead stopped at the corner of the alley. What is your name? He asked in the same monotone. Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto replied evenly. Gaara nodded before looking back at him. I hope to fight you in the Chunin exams, Uzumaki, mother wants your blood. Gaara disappeared in another sandstorm. Naruto let out a shuddering breath. He got the feeling that the entire encounter had gone dangerously close to becoming a bloodbath and that the odds of him coming out alive had been slim. You okay then, Kon? He asked looking down to the child clutching his pants leg. Konohamaru nodded. Yes, Nai-san, I'll be fine. He said drawing a shuddering breath. Naruto ruffled his hair and smiled. Now then, Kon, I would start running if I were you. Naruto said in a conversational tone. You're skipping out on the academy and I am not being anywhere near you when Iruka-sensei catches you. The young boy looked up at him with big eyes. You might want to try finding somewhere to hide. Naruto added. In a blink Konohamaru was gone, only a cloud of dust with a soft cry of. Right, Naruto Nai-san. Hanging in the wind behind him. Naruto chuckled. Kon really wasn't a bad kid by any stretch of the imagination. Kon reminded him of him before he had awakened Benihim. Flashback meeting Konohamaru. Naruto just looked at the Hokage blankly when he was told how much money he would be getting. He looked back at the payslip for 500,000 ryo. Half of this is mine. He said sounding lightheaded. The Hokage looked at him strangely for a second. Naruto-kun. He said slowly. What's on that payslip is your half. Naruto just looked at him dumbly for a second before a massive smile etched itself on his face. Woohoo, oh Kami damn it yes. Look at all those wonderful, wonderful zeros come to papa baby. He yelled running around the office wooting like a frat boy. The old Hokage chuckled. It had been a long time since he had seen Naruto so enthusiastic about something that wasn't ramen or Benihim. Now then, Naruto-kun, there are a few other things that we need to talk about. He said sternly. Naruto turned his attention back to the Hokage. Sure, Jiji, what did you want to talk about? Naruto asked. Naruto, in Wave you were forced to kill innocent people. I know that the academy gets you ready for killing, but it is still never easy. Especially when you have to kill people that have nothing to do with your mission, but are simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. The Hokage finished sounding both so very, very tired and sad. Would you like to talk about it, Naruto-kun? Naruto looked at his Jiji with gratitude in his eyes. He didn't really need to talk about it. Benihim had helped to build his resolve, but the fact that the old man had asked warmed his heart. He smiled. He would talk, mostly for the old man's peace of mind and for a little of his own. Sure, Jiji, I would like that. He said in a warm voice. The aging Sarutobi was a little taken back. In that instant his voice had sounded exactly like Minato's. They spent the next hour going over what Naruto had done in Wave and how he had gotten over it. The old Hokage had joked that it was like Naruto had his own internal psychiatrist. Naruto had laughed at that and then laughed louder when he heard Benihim grumbling about the comparison. They were distracted from their conversation when the door flew open. Today's the I defeat you, old man. Came the overly young and childish voice. Naruto stifled his laughter as he saw the small figure of an 8-year-old run into the room with a training kunai in hand. The scene itself was comedy gold. He couldn't hold in his laughter anymore and started cackling hysterically on the couch. The child turned his attention to him and pouted right before falling over and face planting onto the office floor. Naruto just laughed harder, the old Hokage sighed. I see you have just met my grandson, Konohamaru, Naruto. He said, sounding a little exasperated by the whole ordeal. Naruto just laughed louder. The small boy looked up at Naruto sitting on the couch and laughing like a maniac and pouted while pointing at him. You. He yelled, pointing an accusing finger at Naruto. You tripped me, didn't you? Naruto managed to get his laughter back under control before smiling at the kid. Sorry, that's one thing I can't take credit for, you just tripped over your own feet or maybe that scarf behind you. Word of advice, kid, don't go blaming other for your mistakes unless you can prove it was them. He said, still chuckling. No, it was definitely you. Konohamaru yelled and ran at the still seated Naruto, pulling back his kunai. Naruto leaned back into the couch and grabbed Benihim from beside him. He needed to teach the kid a lesson now before he did something he would regret. Konohamaru's kunai went forward as Benihim was drawn and cut up, going straight through the training kunai and stopping just a few centimeters short of Konohamaru's eye. You know, kid, you might want to work on that temper of yours as well. Naruto sheathed Benihim and stood up. See you later, old man, we'll have to talk again sometime soon. He waved to the Hokage and looked back down at Konohamaru, who was still